So Kendrick Lamar and SZA just completed the third show of their G&X tour, and I just want to point out how this is really history in the making, not only for a hip-hop tour, but for a hip-hop label that is in my opinion, a great representation of hip-hop culture and Black American culture, and American culture that is, as a whole. Now, if you've been following the past year of Kendrick Lamar and of hip-hop in general, we know about the battle with Drake, and we know about the surprise album that followed the battle, G&X, as well as the success of SZA over the past really 3-4 years and her album SOS, and then the deluxe Lana. This culmination of the success of these two projects is very well deserved, and I think is going to lead in a renaissance of very good and artistic music. But let's get into these numbers of this G&X tour so far before we continue about what transition this may lead to in music and hip hop overall. And what inspired me to make this video is this post by Punch, the president of TDE, via his Twitter X account, where he says, "Man, we on a stadium run. It's only a handful of artists that can say that. SOS is back at #1 and will be diamond soon. Dot and SZA been having the #1 song in Luther for 10 weeks straight now. G&X is a classic culturally and commercially, very important. Doechie's project did 11K first week. It's now over 500K in sales. And it all started from an add-on studio in the back of the house in Carson. Extremely proud of the family. TDE PG Lang, hashtag respect the art form." He didn't say hashtag, but I'm guessing it's kind of a hashtag statement there. But that part, respect the art form, I think and when he speaks about G&X being culturally and commercially a classic, I think that's what's so encouraging about what's happening right now, is that there's not a lot of pandering in either of the albums in the way that they're created, the way they're made, the messaging, the features, all of that, right? These are really culturally grounded artists, and the way that they go about their creating their music stays grounded in who they are and where they're from. And in the music industry and just in corporate industry in general, it's very hard to maintain that, because you're always going to get pushback for that, especially when you are of a certain culture and demographic. You know, success like this limits the pushback and the excuses people give as to why you can't represent yourself how you want to represent yourself properly. But enough about that. Let's get into these numbers right quick, then I'll get back into discussing why this is so impactful, in my opinion. Now, just from the last show that they did in Arlington, Texas, which is the Dallas Stadium, the Kendrick Lamar and SZA Grand National Tour in Arlington, Texas at the AT&T Stadium grossed $9.1 million from over 47,000 attendees with an average ticket price of $192. The tour is supporting Lamar's G&X album and SZA's album Lana. That's the deluxe to SOS. Now, the two shows prior to that, the show in Houston, which is one of Drake's U.S. strongholds, okay? It's kind of his United States hometown, so to speak, as that's where he really developed his career. People predicted that that show wouldn't go as well, and here are the numbers to prove that very wrong. At Energy Stadium in Houston, they sold 42,000 tickets. Percentage sold was 93.26 with a revenue of $9.4 million. The first show in Minneapolis, Minnesota, reported tickets sold was 47,000. Percentage sold was 100%, and the revenue from that show was $9.1 million. That show became the #1 highest grossing concert headlining a rap artist. As you see here by the report by Touring Data, Kendrick Lamar is officially the first rapper in history to gross over $9 million in a single concert as headlining or co-headlining artist, breaking Eminem's 2019 record in Melbourne, Australia. Shout out to Eminem for holding that record. But now, as we can see that Kendrick and SZA are going to continuously break that record over and over again, as the Houston record grossed more than the Minnesota show. And as they continue, especially when they get to LA, we know either those or the New York shows are going to be the highest grossing shows throughout the first leg of this United States leg of the tour. And one thing to consider when we're looking at these kind of high gross numbers, and I mean that by the accumulated numbers of the ticket sales, we're in an economic recession now, even though people don't want to say it. And for them to have this kind of impact and still do these kind of numbers in ticket sales at this time in history adds to the impact that this tour is really having and the popularity. despite all the internet noise, this is proof that the internet is not the real world. The internet is the internet, and the real world is real world, right? The two cross paths at times, but not as much as we would like to think. Some of us would like to think anyway. But as we move forward, one thing I would like to point out is that in comparison, like I think the highest grossing tour ever was Taylor Swift's Eras tour, or at least in recent history. And that tour lasted, I think, over a year and a half, almost 2 years. You know, she did $2 billion in revenue overall, 149 shows. That's about what, 13 million a show. So definitely different ticket prices, different genre of music, the whole thing. But I pointed out because of the 149 shows. Now, currently, Kendrick and SZA are scheduled to do 21 shows in the US and another 16 throughout Europe. But, you know, the Taylor Swift tour was throughout every continent pretty much, right? And definitely think Kendrick and SZA will be touching the other continents in Asia and Africa and Australia for sure. Shout out to the Anita Max Win tour or half a tour or whatever that was. Now, that was wrong. I know I didn't have to do that, but it is what it is. So I think that this tour will probably definitely be the highest grossing hip hop tour in history. And, you know, the impact and the transition that this kind of culturally relevant music and culturally concentrated music is a better way to put it, is having on the world is a very important time in hip hop for not only Kendrick and SZA, but for all the artists out there who are trying to level up and be heard. Those who are really, as Punch said in his in that tweet that I showed, those who are really respectful of the art form. Now, for sure, right now, it is very hard to break through the noise of Kendrick versus Drake, mostly due to the extremes of the fan bases, right? It's very hard to break through the success of this tour, but at the same time, you can do it, right? When I look at Doechii, when I look at Ray Vaughn's new project that he just dropped, shout out to Ray Vaughn, I'll be doing an album review on that soon enough. It's going to take a little more creativity to break through the noise now. The level has been pushed up in hip hop for sure, and we have to meet that level. Though Kendrick did win the battle convincingly, every record from both artists was pretty high level for such a short period of time. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, everybody was watching. So now when you release records and albums that used to work pre that battle, they probably don't work as well because just the level of creativity has been pushed up in hip hop. You know, I listen to records that I used to listen to, you know, that were pretty good mid-level records. I'm not talking about, you know, the mega hits that we've had of the past. Those will always stand the test of time, but just the general bar of hip hop has been pushed up. And I think the cultural impact of this tour, people should pay attention to what they're doing on the tour, the creativity, the thought that they're putting into their presentation, not only on the tour, but in the records that they are featuring on this tour. And a lot of the records that were released in 2024, even though a lot of them went under the radar, there was a lot of excellent hip hop released in 2024 last year. So certain artists did get the message that it's time to push the level up of the music. This is great for the genre. This is great. We have a lot of new ears due to the battle. We have a lot of new eyes on the culture due to the battle. Artists, this is the time for you to capitalize and really push the level up, because Kendrick and SZA are right now in real time redefining what great hip hop and R&B is. And I think everybody has to follow suit, because without a doubt, the Grand National Tour is history in the making.